everybody. Welcome to the Lynn and Scott and Friends show. As we all see it, I'm Scott Jones. We got Lynn Serrano. We have some of our regular guests, Barry Selby, Rex Sikes, Alan. No, I didn't ask about how to pronounce your last name.
Baris.
Yeah. All right. That's it. Change it to Smith, Lynn. Just change his name to Smith. We're just going to make this easy. It's a Tuesday night. I should not have to fucking struggle on a Tuesday night. All right?
Well,
it's good to have you guys all here, and I'm sure we'll be joined by a few others. Had a few that couldn't make it tonight. Hopefully Scott will be joining us soon. But we're going to be talking about a really cool topic, and I think this came up in some of our chatter last week at the end of the show. It's who are you pretending not to be? And I think, Barry, you were kind of leading the way on this discussion. So why don't you explain what we mean by this?
Well, let me give a context of where I first discovered this, or I should say learnt it. Many years ago, back in many eons ago, I was in a leadership seminar, and they had this banner across the stage, which was there the whole time. It was a 3-month seminar, Monday morning meetings and weekends, and the sign was up the whole time. And every so often they referred to it, and the sign said, "Who are you pretending not to be?" And most of us sitting there going, I don't know what they meant by that. And when they explained it, it was like, wow. Because the idea being is that most of us play smaller than we really are. So the idea being is who we're pretending not to be. Is we're pretending not to be strong, magnificent, successful, whatever it is, because of different reasons. So most of it is the self-talk and I won't say necessarily the lies, but they are kind of the falsehoods we tell ourselves that limit us from being who we really want to be. So really the whole principle is that we are much more than we think we are, and much more than we tell ourselves we are. So that's kind of the premise.
Well, I'm obviously pretending not to be Arnold Schwarzenegger.
There you go.
You're doing a good job. You had us all fooled.
No, I'm not being Arnold.
Right.
making the record straight.
There you go.
It's a great premise, Barry. It's a great. It opens it all up. I mean, arguably, mystics from the East, from eons ago, as you point out, would say we're pretending to be anything other than our authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the mask or the personality or the persona or the ego that we adopt and wear.
Yeah.
Now, both of you have some knowledge on this, obviously, or put some thought into it. Is there a reason we do this? I mean, is there kind of a reasoning behind this? Or is it avoidance? Is it fear? Or you said, is it a whole bunch of stuff?
Well, but simply put, my experience was, and this is my own personal experience is that oftentimes we don't necessarily know how we fit in. And the problem is, for most of us, we're like square pegs trying to fit in round holes. As in, we're trying to fit into a structure or a society or a family or whatever it is, that isn't who we really are. And so, some people, for example, they're creators and they learn to play these musical instruments, but the family won't let them. But then their real innate nature is to be musical and creative and wonderful. But it takes them years to get to that point because they have to shed all that stuff that they were imprinted with by their families or their peers or their school or whatever it was. So really, it is so many different things that can provide us with the reasons for not doing what we want to do or be who we're meant to be, that sort of thing.
Isn't that like society kind of like, or our culture? Well, yeah. Not that we really have a real culture here. It's, but we have no, because it's such a mixture. I mean, we don't have that like traditional culture stuff, but we have society that's constantly telling us, forget about who you are. This is who you're supposed to be. Exactly. This is what you're supposed to drive. This is what you're supposed to wear. This is the job you're supposed to do. And this is how people are supposed to act and react and do all those things. So I think we probably, during our formative years, we follow our parents. And then in high school, we follow our peers. And then we get into college, and then we go a little bit beyond. We start listening to society and the banks and the credit system, trying to figure out who we're supposed to be. So, we're swimming against the stream from the very beginning of our lives, aren't we?
In a way, yeah, because the whole premise, the American dream is 2.4 kids and white picket fence, that sort of stuff. Most of the population isn't meant to do that, isn't necessarily meant to do that. But we're still trying to fit in that conformity because that's what we think success is, or fitting in is, or how to feel good is. Unfortunately, a lot of our teachings, whether it's from the church or from government or from school or from family, can be constricting. And that's where we get into trouble because we're not honoring who we really are. Most people, frankly, that's why I think a lot of people go through midlife crisis. because they go through that sort of doing what they're supposed to do, and they get to midlife and going, hang on a second, I want the sports car, I want this, because they want to change their paradigm. So then becomes a question like, if you really want to do what you want to do, what's stopping you? Why are you saying no to that? You know,
Alan, let's kick you in early. Are you picking up on this pretty good, or?
Yes, I mean, it makes me think of some different things because I've always sort of wondered where I fit into groups because I got so many different sides. I mean, I am comfortable sitting with a group of military guys or a group of martial artists and can talk with the filthiest of language, drinking down shots, the filthiest of language, telling horror stories of blood, guts, or women, or whatever you want to talk about in that realm. And then you can put me over here with a group of doctors and lawyers, and I can fit with that and be as cultured. And who am I really? I mean, I spent 30 minutes with President Ronald Reagan in his office, one-on-one talking. And then I have spent time talking with people that, definitely wouldn't put in the same room with President Ronald Reagan, and have been comfortable in all of those different areas. So when you're sitting there, who am I pretending not to be? I'm like, because I am this person, but I'm also that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely have behaved differently depending on which groups and places that I happen to be. So that's sort of where my mind went with some of this.
Well, I think some of that is, I mean, in good communication, in you have to be adaptable. I don't talk the same way when I go to grandma's house for dinner as I did with hanging out with the guys, playing ball in the park. You don't talk. So we are chameleons in that sense. If you are successful, you know how to do that, move from room to room. But can you do that without losing track of who you really are? I think that's the question. And can you still be authentic to you while you move within this? I was actually in a bad mood when the show started tonight because I've had to deal with some people who are completely against some of the things I believe in, which is basic human rights and different things like that. I mean, there's some real crazy, let's not teach certain things, let's burn some books kind of people that I have to deal with because of what I do. And sometimes I just get to a point where, you know what? Fuck it. I just want to tell them what I really think, but I got to hold that back.
You didn't right now.
Because it's as we all see it here. It's whatever you want to say.
And I understand the adapting communication because I teach that stuff, communicating to make sure that you communicate so others understand you. But to take that into deeper, I mean, I am the knuckle dragger. I mean, I was an infantry soldier, sniper trained, airborne, knuckle dragger, kick the doors down, shoot them in the head. That's what we were. But I'm also the attorney, mediator, Pepperdine trained, kind of. So
the thing is,
who am I really?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I have to ask myself because I'm not sure sometimes.
And
you might want to ask a different question then.
Yeah. And I want to bring,
who am I, and not getting an answer. Maybe you want to ask what my purpose is.
There you go. And I want to bring one thing that'll be in the middle of all of this is I did learn something, and it was I always mess up when I say the proper name for it, but it's face reading. I learned face reading a long time ago. And one thing with the face reading is there's one side that's your personal side, and your personal inner side, and the other part is your outer side, your business person, how you handle business, and your outer person and the inner person. And so it is very interesting because the face, it tells a lot about who you are. It's the face reading is very interesting stuff. So, your face doesn't lie as far as a lot of things.
Thank you, Quasimodo in the bottom corner.
Go
ahead,
Barry.
Well, I was going to say, just push back on Alan for a second, because the thing about it is, like, you've done so many different things. But the question is, even though in those things you've been doing, who are you being? Because that's really the separation. That's the thing about
Yeah.
this thing about who you pretend not to be. Because it's not about who you pretend not to do or what you pretend not to do. It's who you pretend not to be. And the thing is, for some of us, and I for myself growing up, I did the best to fit in certain places where I didn't feel like I was truly aligned, but it was safer for me to do that. So we all have different reasons and modalities. And sometimes it's because we choose to go somewhere. Sometimes it's because we have to go somewhere. And so we might find ourselves, I don't want to say performing, but certainly acting a certain way that isn't necessarily true to our values. Is what we do to fit in as well, you know?
Well, and sometimes we have to do things that are not of us, or just because, you know, like at work, sometimes you're following the policies and procedures of work.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't,
Yeah.
you know, it goes against the grains of what you would do. There's those gray areas that just doesn't fit who you are. And then there's things that when you, and thank you for your service, Alan, but when you were doing that, you had to fit the form of what you had to do. But that doesn't defy who you are now, or doesn't defy, you know, how you feel, you know, or those things. But, you know, they're, like you said, that we're not our work. We're not what we've done. You know, we are different. We can change that at any time. I've learned that through Rex, and I'm grateful for for learning that. And it's a great tool that Rex teaches, which makes my life a lot easier.
So Rex, would the motivation behind being, you know, changing and doing those kind of things, does that make a difference as well? You know, what your motivation is, if your motivation is strictly to get them to accept you, or whether the motivation is because this is what I truly want for me?
That's a good question. It's an interesting question and could be answered probably 1,000 different ways, depending. I mean, obviously, most questions could be that way, but even with this conversation, I think it's kind of important to differentiate, you know, that there's a lot of different ways that we slice up the world, and they're arbitrary. I would first offer, and I'll come back to the statement, that consciousness evolves and is interested in evolution, and it expands, it moves forward. It's energy that can't be created or destroyed, but it can be transformed. So it's moving forward and evolving, but it's also breaking down and, you know, in entropy. So you have this kind of conflicts of things that go on. You know, I talk about the fact that there's polarity of opposites. There's hot and cold and in and out and dark and light and all these different kinds of things. It's all part of something, but it depends on where your attention is. You know, do you say light is casting out darkness and darkness flees, or is, you know, light coming through the darkness? I mean, you know, how we decide to define things makes a difference as to how we understand it or how we act. At the level of some of the conversation here, you know, there's environment and there's like movement. Okay, so there's a place and then there's movement, and movement can be defined as a behavior that we do. You know, like breathing is a behavior, or going to the bathroom is a behavior, but it's a learned behavior, you know, in terms of going to the bathroom, toilet training. There's actions that we can take, like deciding to learn how to drive a car and then become a driver of the car there, so that we become capable of things. You know, we have beliefs, we have identity, we have values, we have, you know, maybe a connection with the universe or whatever. So, I mean, you know, some people call this a hierarchy of things, and whether it is or not is depending on, I guess, who's describing it. But if you think about consciousness evolving, then what consciousness, like, I love the version of the myth that says God is all and God hid God inside of each of us, with the idea that each of us needs to discover that we are God, or we're infinite intelligence, or we're universe, or we're cosmic, whatever descriptor you want to use, but that we are so much more and beyond what we think that we do, because of the way we have been, or how our energy is brought into this plane of existence. You know, we're born through a birth canal and we grow up with people around us. We adopt and absorb, you know, their ideas and their philosophies and everything without necessarily wanting to, and think that that is us. So, you know, the consciousness is interesting, because I say, and I'm not certainly not the only one, but, you know, if you take a drop of water from the ocean and you put it on a tabletop, that water on the tabletop is just as much the ocean as the water in the ocean itself, because that's where it came from. And if you take that drop and put it back into the ocean, where does it go? You're going to be hard pressed to find the drop. And so we are consciousness with the possibility of awakening to who we are, and so different things, we'll call it different self, original face or authentic self, or remember, we're using language to try and describe some of the indescribable things, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about them. So if what Alan described was beautiful, because as a human operating in the world, we have different talents and abilities and opportunities to express those. So in one circumstance, like if you walk into a church, you might be, very, dedicated to the atmosphere of the environment and the people around you, and that might be a respectful thing to do. And if you're out in the jungle doing something else, then you would be doing what you needed to do. So it's dependent on the environment, it's dependent on the situation, it's dependent on the opportunities, it's dependent on whether you're being attacked or you're attacking, or whether there's nothing going, so some of it's utility, some of it is about utility or utilitarian, or about use in terms of what we present. But who is the presenter of all of that is the question. And the spiritual question is who were you before you were born, or what was the face that you had before you this face, or who is your authentic self? And this is where we have the possibility to awaken to just some awesome, incredible, magical, wonderful things or experiences. And very few will do it, because it does require leaving a comfort zone, and that comfort zone is what we're familiar with.
So now we're back to what came first, the chicken or the egg?
That's right, it did.
So that's interesting. You're saying very few people. So is that equivalent to saying very few people have the ability to tap into their own power?
No, everybody does have the ability to tap into, but few will tap into.
Right.
That's what I meant to say. That's what I meant to say. Is it
the
very
reason
few
is
people
if
will
you
be
don't
able to
know,
tap into it?
if you don't know you have food on your face, you're going to walk around with food on your face to everyone you meet, and you're not going to know it. You're not going to change it. But if you became aware that you had food on your face, then you say, "Oh, I'm going to take that off, or I'm going to wear it proudly." But the point is the same thing with our awareness. If we're not aware of who we are outside of the pretense that we are, then we'll never look for it. So until people wake up to the possibility that there's something beyond what they're living at, and most of what that is lack and desperation and paycheck to paycheck and all of the different kinds of thoughts and experiences that the traffic in the world and the making the rent pay, that we're distracted from everything else because we're too busy dealing with daily stuff. As some people have said, for example, enlightenment or religion or awareness is a rich person's experience. And I don't mean just monetarily, but once you're free from having to deal with all the petty stuff, then it's a luxury. Then you can go, okay, well, I'm going to go meditate for an hour at the beach. But to go to a 9-to-5 job every day, getting that hour to meditate becomes harder.
So we're so busy reacting to life that we're not actually living it, or even creating our direction, or we're just reacting. Barry, you seem to be nodding your head the whole time with Rex. Are you going along with what he's doing there? It's like a bobblehead up in the corner.
Yeah, no, it's bobblehead, right. No, I mean, I agree with Rex on that one, so much of that, because the truth is for most of us, because the thing is, we are so trained to believe our three senses. What we hear, what we see, and basically what we can touch. But there's so much more to sensory than that. What we can feel innately, we can intuit, we can sense something bigger than that. I've had multiple spiritual experiences where I know without any doubt that who I am is much more than this physical self. I don't necessarily think that way all the time, because I get distracted, as I said, by driving or by feeding or by doing other things in the physical world. But when I sit still for a moment, I go, oh, hang on a second, I know who I am, which is who I was before I was born and who I'll be after I die, in that sense. Now that's my experience, my beliefs, not true for everybody else necessarily. But what Rex was saying, yeah, it makes sense to me. I do understand that and agree with it. And the thing about this life, and this is what's so interesting, is, and it's interesting because it's about the contrast by black and white, positive, negative, all these different things. But there are people who live on the planet whose self-chosen job is to make more of that division. And frankly, and this is the thing, this is one of my big pet peeves about what's happening in America, it's happening in other countries too. where people like to make the others worse or troublesome or affecting us, so we have to dislike them or evict them or be against them. If we simply recognize, and this is the big ask, if we simply recognize that we're all the same human race, no matter what gender, color, sexual preference, height, whatever that stuff is, and we realize that we're all the same, that there's no real separation, it'd be a whole different place to live on this planet.
Mm.
I mean, I'm a big science fiction fan. There's a Star Trek episode from the original series about it was Frank Gorshin was in it. I can't remember the name of the episode, but basically where he and this other guy were beamed on the ship, and they were always attacking each other, fighting each other, and arguing each other. And they had their faces painted black on one side, white on the other. The reason why they argue with each other is because each one of them had it the other way around. They look the same to everybody else because nobody thought to look at which was left and which was right. But this is what we do. We make up separation. We make up differences to argue against. It's so much easier to love than to hate, frankly. But we like hate because it's more fun, I think.
Alan keeps looking, and being such a martial.
It just came out. No, it's true.
And Alan, being from a martial arts background and the discipline in that, what's your perspective on
what? I mean, there's a lot of things.
I know. I just want you're the new guy on the block. I'd love just to.
What do you want to karate chop right now?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I still got stuck on Rex's ocean, taking the drop of ocean.
Yeah.
The drop of ocean on the table, it's still the ocean. Because I don't think so. Because I think the ocean, you have to have the whole collection. If you take part of it, it's not the ocean anymore. It's a small part of water. I think the ocean, you have to have the larger big group. And so I was stuck on that part.
So,
but then I also I agree. I love what Barry was saying about we are all people, and unfortunately, I don't know when we'll ever see that, because as far back of history as we go, we always find the differences to fight over rather than the similarities to come together. I mean, we do come together with similarities. I mean, we got our little cliques everywhere, but as a whole, it seems like we always look for the differences, and, greed and quest for power and more always enters the equation as far back as humans have been. And so how do we get past that? I don't know.
Well, what part of the day is the correct part of the day or night?
Because it's happening somewhere at 5 o'clock somewheres.
Right.
There's always 5 o'clock somewhere.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Ellen. You're I just mean, when you think about it, I mean, a day is made up of moments and days. As a whole, we're made up of individual people, but we're one species.
Right.
And I would argue that even beyond one species, we are the cells of the universe in the same way that cells make up your body, and that there's no, other than the form of it, there's no difference between you and the brick wall I'm looking at, or my dog over here, or anything else. That we're just energy in different forms. We're just one whole thing. But that goes back to the law of polarity, or the law of cause and effect. When you have night, you also have day. When you have in, you have out. When you have good, you have not so good. When you have greed, you have generosity. When you have abundance, you have lack. You have these things that are seemingly polar, and this what appears to be the case that some religious, and I say religious, let's say mystics would make, is that abundance and lack are part of the same thing. It's just one person is looking at what they have, the other person is looking at what they don't have, but what is there is going to be eternally and always present. So you're absolutely correct that people will always find things to quibble over, but this is consciousness. This is consciousness doing its thing. Let me explain it to you this way. It's kind of hard to understand. I get that,
because you're touching on and yang, Korean, yin yang, Chinese, where
entanglement.
You have the root, the inside each other, good and
right.
Evil, light and dark. I mean, so exactly. I mean, that's been thought about and questioned and debated for as long as probably people have been around.
Well, I mean, could we have light without dark? Could we have light without dark? I mean, you can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rex.
Well, I was just going to say it depends at the level of what your discussion is, because religious leaders would say that, but at the level of practicality, you would say, well, that person's taking my corn, and I want my corn, and so you have that, but then the question becomes, well, is there enough corn, or is there enough food? If you believe that there was enough, it wouldn't really matter. It's when you don't believe that there's enough that then it matters, and there's been competition over resources since humans have, evolved. So. There's a certain amount of, but then again, those people who've talked about it for eons have also said that because of where we're at mentally, spiritually, emotionally, in terms of our maturity as a being, we're still playing around in areas that are less than what we could be playing around in because we're competing for resources. And if we understood things differently, and we understood that there really is enough for everybody, it's just a matter of distribution, then you go, oh, well, okay, so there's enough. Like there's plenty of money in the world. We create it every day. We create trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, but not everybody has it because they don't get access to it. So, it only takes one idea to transform the world. So if we start embracing ideas like, wow, there could be enough for everybody could be fed, everybody could live an opulent, actually wonderful life, and we were seeding that continuously, not on the greedy side, but seeding it continuously that everyone deserves the best and everyone is worthy of the best, then perhaps we would change a little bit faster than saying, if it comes down to the last cookie, I'm going to blow my neighbor's face off. So, it depends on where we are in the argument, or in the discussion, rather.
Well, in some areas, when you talk about that kind of opulence and everybody could have, then people ststart yelling communists, and they start, Marxists. They find ways to tear it down. I want to take it back for, exactly. I want to take it back for a minute, back to the topic for just kind of get my ideas flowing in here too. First of all, I love the idea of the water on the table, a little drop of water. But my first thought wasn't about whether it's the ocean or not. My first thought went to it's going to leave a mark. So I have been trained by the women in my life to recognize watermarks on furniture. But I'll tell you,
good boy.
The funny thing is who you're pretending not to be. And actually, when you're talking, Rex, when you're talking about like everything all works together, everything is all part of everything. That's the same way I am, though, as well. I don't, when I deny who I am or pretend not to be, what I'm usually trying to do is get rid of all my faults, my misgivings, my misdeeds, my missteps, and try to create this perfect persona. And that's at least where I've been in my past. Even to the point of creating other identities for myself at certain times. And it was not a pleasant place to be, where I was trying to constantly make up and hide the things that I've done. Whereas my life turned when I started to embrace everything I've done. All of my experiences are what I am. All of my deeds are what I am. Are we defined by what we do for work? Of course we are. We're also defined by every action we take, every word we say, every breath we take defines us. To deny any part of that, it's to deny a part of who we are. And that's why, I'm certainly not proud of the path that I took in my life. I'm not proud of the things that I've done to my wives and my children. I'm not proud of the things that I've done that were illegal or hurtful to other people. I'm not proud of those things. But I don't live in shame and guilt and try to hide from them anymore. I have to embrace them because it's a part of my journey to become the person that I am. And if I leave those pieces out, I will never be fulfilled in who I am as a person. Does that make any sense, guys?
Absolutely.
Yes. I don't know that I agree that you would never be fulfilled, but I don't disagree with you.
Well, I could never be the whole person, I don't think. If I were to take away those,
I think there's also possibilities for you to be a whole person in a variety of different ways. But as you say it, that's how it's going to be.
But otherwise, though, what I said is that, Scott, is if you're someone who basically looks back at the things you did in the past that were bad, and you keep judging it as bad, and you keep blaming yourself, and you keep doing the negative stuff, it's going to be really hard to feel good about yourself.
Well,
So
when you embrace it, it no longer is good or bad. It is what it is. It's
Right.
a part of my journey. And certainly if I went back and had a chance to do it over, I'd say, well, I probably should have made a different decision. But that decision, for some reason, brought me where I am now. You know, had I not done what I'd done, I wouldn't be living in Florida. I'd still be maybe stuck in Jersey.
I'm
Had
sorry.
I not done, yeah, I know.
No, but wait a second. He's stuck in Florida. Let's not make a mistake about where he's at. I mean, Jersey, by comparison, is heaven.
Had I not done what I'd done and had the diverse, all the issues that we had as a family, the bond I have with my children would be much different than it is today. And the way it is today is incredible. And I wouldn't want to give any of that up. So yeah, you're right, Barry. I mean, looking back and saying that's evil, that's bad, that's, you know, I certainly look back and I can certainly look at it and say, not my greatest moment, but it is a moment that was necessary for me to become who I am. You know, I don't like the idea of, I'm going to put that part of me away and pretend that never existed and just move on.
Sweeping it under the rug.
If you sweep under the rug the experiences, you sweep the lessons under the rug too.
Right.
You can't keep the lessons without keeping the experiences.
Right.
So I need to do that for me, and that's part of pretending not to be who I am is part, which I've done for years, is me being in denial of what I've been and what I've done. That's part of it. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to add that today I wrote a blog about why people aren't getting what they want when they're trying to manifest stuff. And tomorrow I have a blog on hardship and what it's about and why things are hard. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting that this topic arises today for me. But I say, you know, I mean, you know me. I go, if you consider it a problem, it's a problem. If you consider it a blessing, it's a blessing. So celebrate everything, because when you do, you release everything. So the worst people in my life and the worst circumstances and the worst events in my life have been defining moments. Well, thank you very much. And who was that masked man? And he
had glasses on.
He's a handsome guy.
I don't know. I'm in my Dr. Jekyll mode, and you know, versus the point is that everything contributes to who we are, and everything can be a blessing. And when you embrace it, when you allow it, when you receive it, when you let it go, when you stop it from being a problem, and just allow it, it is what it is. So there's an interesting phenomenon. There are certain people in my life who were really, for lack of being, for being able to describe them, they're perfectly wonderful, great human beings. I thought they were totally despicable, horrible, you know, jerk assholes who were out to ruin my life in whatever way, shape, or form they possibly could. And they were just being themselves. Okay. And I have hated them and everything forever. And then one day I go, you know what? They were really there to teach me how to be who I am. They were there for me to release all of the stuff that made them a problem. And when I could release and forgive, and by that not because they did something wrong, but when I could forgive and let go, not forgive and never forgot, but forgive and let go myself and them, then I realized they were really teachers all along. And the lessons were up to me to find. And everything was great. And well, that's really wonderful. And so people can look back on their worst experiences and go, you know, if it weren't for that moment, I wouldn't be the wonderful person I am now. Or some people will look back on their worst experience and go, I wouldn't be the horrible mess that I am right now. So it depends on how you look at it.
It's true.
But for some people, it's easier to forgive that totally horrible, egregious, like Frankenstein-like monster person, right? Than it is to go, somebody on the freeway cuts you off and you go, well, screw the heck out of you. You know, it's like all of the enlightenment goes out the window, because the biggest example is sometimes easier to let go of than the littlest stuff that it's like a tiny pebble in your shoe can wreck your whole day. So it's learning how to, you know, move through the world and become aware of those things that are rubbing us the wrong way, and then release those as you did, and let those go and accept those and embrace those and celebrate who you are. And every part of the experience, you could argue, whether you want to or not, is you chose that all along the way, unconsciously or as your authentic self or whatever. So it's your story. So embrace it and enjoy it and love it and make it work.
And people don't understand that they keep getting the same lesson, and they don't understand that it's going to continue to happen until they learn that lesson.
Yeah, why does the same shit happen over and over again? It's because you didn't learn anything.
Actually, sometimes what happens, the lessons get slightly heavier and harder because you didn't learn the first time.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
Barry, what would Richard Bach say about problems?
Oh,
Do you
God,
remember what he wrote? He wrote, behind every problem is a gift. We have problems so that we can receive their gifts.
Well, wait, I'll use another one. Actually, one of my friends, Lisa Nichols, talks about how relationships are like gifts wrapped in sandpaper sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, there's like Rex was saying, like there were a gift inside, but you got to get through the sandpaper to get there, sort of thing. So the friction, the discomfort can come first. Actually, speaks to what you said earlier, Scott. One of the quotes I learned a long time ago, which I've used myself and I've used with clients, is if you're happy where you are now in your life, you love what you're up to, who you are, and what you're about, then everything that happened before that has to be blessed as well because it got you here. Which means everything good, bad, or different, like Rex was saying, it's all part of the journey. And yeah, it is an extra step to go to the place that I created all the stuff to get me here. But just the fact you did get here and you're happy with who you are, what came before is still part of the journey. And that's the thing we have is we get to step up and having a lesson and we go through the lessons. And because the thing is, and it's funny, I was rewatching for the third time Ted Lasso and watching the journey of Nate the Great through the third season, where he goes from being the almost the devil incarnate to being the humble servant at the end because he recognized his own journey and the fact that he got the message about forgiving himself because that was the crap in the way. It's like he becomes whole again, because that's the thing for all of us is that we're not forever damaged. Like, in Catholic faith, you're born in sin, you stay in sin, you die in sin. It's like, no, we have the ability to lift ourselves up by forgiveness, by grace, by caring, by loving, by making amends with other people, like in 12 steps, same things as well. There are ways to be restorative to ourselves. But the thing is, a lot of people don't even know they can do that or choose that.
Love that.
I find the humor that when you're frustrated with something and you go, okay, this is the way it is, and you just embrace it, then the resistance is gone, and it was no big deal after all. It's just amazing.
Well, to that point, Lynn, and to Barry's, and to Scott and to Alan's, so the whole thing is that our thoughts brought us to where we are, and that's where we are. And our thoughts today will take us to where we are tomorrow. However, in addition, if a week, a month, a year from now, tragedy strikes and the shit hits the fan and everything falls apart, that's the universe or God or infinite intelligence, whatever, going, okay, it's time to wake up again. If you're in your comfort zone, I'm giving you something to become aware of, so that you can continue your evolution. And the difference between how you experience that then depends on how you are now. So if you can look back at your past and go, everything brought me to here, all of the tragedy, all of the sandpaper people, all of the events, everything else, it means that you then wake up to the possibility that when shit hits the fan some other time in the future, you navigate it differently than you would have earlier because you've evolved more, you've become more conscious. So it's not that it's like earthquakes don't stop because consciousness arises on the planet. I mean, if there are enlightened people on the planet or not, there's going to be forest fires or whatever happens. So shit may always happen. That's that polar opposite stuff, but how you go through it changes because of who you are when you go through it.
Right.
Another quote from my grad school. One of the things they told us right at the beginning, which was a pain to learn, is how you relate to the issue is the issue.
Yes, indeed it is.
Yes.
I often say the solution to your problem is the problem because you're so busy looking for a solution that you don't see what you're doing.
That's what I was saying before. I just didn't say it as eloquent as you two just did.
Well, there's a piece. There's a piece in some of the 12-step programs, and it's one of the rewards, which is we intuitively know how to handle things that used to baffle us. But you only get to do that by being aware of what you're going through, learning from it, and then moving on and doing it again and again. One of the big problems with things like addiction and mental health issues sometimes is that when we face a problem, it could be the same problem I faced yesterday and the day before and the day before. Each time I face it, it's just as baffling. I have no new information to deal with it. I have no new skills to deal with it. And it becomes like just massively overwhelming. So it's really, I love that. You kind of grow. It gets to a point listen, I love to sit down and do New York Times crossword puzzles. It's one of my favorite things to do. And then sometimes I'll grab another crossword puzzle book. Say I'm getting on a plane and I forgot mine. I'll grab one, and they're all easy. And there's nothing more frustrating to me than doing an easy puzzle. I want the challenge. Yeah. I don't want to just sit there. It's like, it's like doing a word search that's only, I'm looking for the word cat. The whole word search only has 3 letters, C-A-N-T. That's not entertaining to me. I want something to challenge me. But the funny thing is then I get out there in the world and I have a challenging thing, and I don't look at it with the same frame of mind I do when I sit down with that puzzle. And I think that's a problem that we all have in a certain way, or most people have.
You want the answer right away.
Yeah, we just don't. We love to challenge ourselves in some ways. Halloween comes, I want to go in a house, I want to be scared. That's what I want. I go to an amusement park, I want to be in a thrill ride. But the minute the car jerks and I panic, and it's like, well, now it's not thrilling anymore. It's how we deal with these things. I love challenges unless I didn't ask for that challenge. That's, I guess, my problem. If it's somebody else's challenge, I don't want that shit. I just want the ones that I want. But is anybody else picking up on that? Any other
I think you make a great point, Scott. It's like we all probably acknowledge that some of the most rewarding things in our lives were due to the struggles and what it took to achieve that. But I think you're right. Many times when a struggle or a challenge appears, we don't want it. We want to get to eat. So I think you did hit on something there.
Well, I mean, it's people have their preferences. Like they'll do an Iron Man, they'll struggle, they'll do whatever. But then somebody says, can you take out the trash? It's like, well, no, that's not, in my wheel. So I call this a gladiator mindset. You go, bring me your biggest, your greatest champion, your best swordsman, and I will prevail, kind of thing. All chess players, like you, Scott, want an equivalent or better opponent, so that they are challenged. They don't want to play somebody they can massacre. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But when it comes to day-to-day life, you just go, I just want it easy. Why does a garage door work?
Well, the air conditioning in Scott's case.
Right. Well, I embraced this thing. I said, I'm going to live. You think you're tough? Bring it. Go ahead. Give me the worst ever, and I will show you who I am. And I shared that with a woman friend of mine of kind of persuasion that we have here together, talking, and she goes, why on earth would you ever do that? Why didn't you go, make it easy? I love it. Come on, shine it down, rain out. And I was like, because it doesn't really matter. It's going to be whatever it is. I finally stepped up to the plate and said, you know what, if it's going to be tough, I can handle it, as opposed to make it easy and I can maybe manage to get around it. I mean, I would imagine that what you went through, Alan, was not easy in any way, shape, or form, and you're here today, and, you rose to the occasion, you did what you had to do, and you lived your life, and and that's the kind of attitude I think we need to have more of. If the task requires that we be present and be fully, engaged in something, as opposed to going, well, I don't know, I mean, I need to get my nails done, or I hurt myself. I'm making light of it, but what I'm saying is there's plenty of stuff that we don't enjoy, but needs to be done anyway. So the question becomes, if you have to do it anyway, you need to find it inside yourself. How do you make it so that you can do it and enjoy it, or do it and live with it, or do it, because I used to do the whole pain thing, like a friend of mine said, he quit smoking. I said, how did you quit smoking? He said, I put a cigarette out in the back of my hand. Whoa. Until I quit.
What do you watch? Fight
Club?
Club?
Try that, right? I took his cigarette and I went like that. I said, I would never, ever do that again. That is the dumbest, stupidest thing ever. Why I even did that is stupid. I'm like, well, that sucks. So the point is, I mean, most of it, and there are these people, just heap massive amounts of pain on yourself and you'll move away from it. Yeah, right. There's a handful of people who will do that because they'll flagellate themselves in or out of church. It doesn't matter, with the cat o' nine tails. But most people ain't going to do that. Or at least the smart ones aren't going to put cigarettes out in their hands when they don't smoke. So, I mean, that's another secret.
Go ahead, Barry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm not going to follow that. No, it's funny. What you said, though, just remind me of another one of these wonderful things that I remember hearing. Is like, they say that God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. Right. I wish they didn't have as much faith. I wish they had less faith in me. Because the thing is, we do get sometimes challenged by things that we don't know how we're going to handle it. But we look back 5 years later, we're going, I handled it. So there's definitely the opportunity to grow through stuff. It's funny you mentioned about the smoking, the cigarette thing. I remember some seminars that I heard about people did. I didn't do the seminars themselves, but they always had this thing about the way to reprogram your negative thinking was to have a rubber band around your wrist and you snap yourself every time you negative thought. I was thinking most people are going to just reinforcing the negative thinking because the pain's going to be tied to negative thinking. So it's not going to work. So it's like to change your way of thinking and start, as you're saying, not as much bring on your worst, bring on everything. Because then it's good, bad, and indifferent. You don't judge which is which. You do like everything is what life is about. Let's have fun with everything. Because that's the other part is, can you have fun through life? Again, how you relate to the issue is the issue. If you can relate to the issue as something like, oh, this is going to be fun, or this is going to be possible, rather than going, oh no, it's going to be this, you might get through it more easily.
Well, I don't know about the rubber band thing. I went to a go-go bar with a rubber band with a bunch of friends. And my idea was to snap it every time I started to think that one of the girls liked me. And I left broke without the rubber band. And somewhere out there, there's a stripper with a rubber band engagement ring. And I don't know where
my God. Scott.
I'll tell you this, though. The funny thing is we keep talking about adversity and different things like that. And it's part of what builds us, certainly. But the funny thing is that we celebrate the adversity of others. We honor the adversity of others. We look at people who have either disabilities or something or misfortunes, and we're like, holy cow, I can't believe, and we honor them. But then when adversity comes our way, we don't honor the adversity the way we honor it in other people. We don't look at it like this is something that I should feel proud of for going through and dealing with. We don't look at it the same way. But when we see it in other people, we're like, good for you. That's great. You inspire me, but just don't bring me any of your shit,
Well, I think the funny but true thing is when people, what I've learned, especially when I had my hair purple, people would come say, you know what, that good for you. You did that. I don't have the nerve to do that. I think, when people have enough nerve to tell you how they feel about what you're doing, it's really them voicing what they wish they had enough guts to do, because a lot of people, the inspiration comes is it only takes one person to beat the 1 mile, do a 3-minute mile for everybody else then to do it, And so again, when people go ahead and not pretend and be their vulnerable person, it took a couple people to say, hey, I don't identify for being this or that, or it took somebody to say, hey, I'm this or that, for things to move forward. I mean, it just takes people to not pretend anymore and to say, my feelings are hurt, or it takes people to have the freedom of speech to feel and speak how they feel. It takes a show like this to say, as we all see it different ways. And I love that we see it all different ways. And for Alan to say the way he feels, and all of us to share how we feel, to have a safe place to come and still appreciate us having our thoughts to come together and still be friends and still respect our yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm saying. As we all see it, we should have that right to not be afraid to speak our thoughts.
Agreed.
I love that you brought up the Bannister effect, the 3-minute mile thing, because I was
4 minutes. I gotta say 4 minutes.
Okay.
Nobody's done the 3 yet.
Okay.
Oh, no, 4.
I'm trying to challenge the people to think about this.
Nobody's done the 3 yet.
Yeah. But that's
Speedy Gonzalez did it under 3, but we can't watch his cartoons anymore.
But exactly, that's it. And I'm glad you noticed I said that wrong. But that's the point, That's the
I was
point.
thinking about my old Pinto that made a 3-minute mile. Downhill.
To start.
Downhill.
but again, that's the thing is why can we not have a healthy discussion? And I was going to say, Alan, as far as the water, you didn't think it was ocean water, but look at all of us. I mean, you're right. It's not in the water, but its origin, it came from the ocean. So you got to say its nationality is ocean water. I mean, it came from somewhere. It didn't come from
and that's
milk
what I
water.
would say. I would say it's ocean water. It's not the ocean.
Right, but it's ocean water, right? It didn't come from milk substance. It came from ocean water.
See, what we learn is how Alan thinks about things. He goes, this part is ocean water, but not the ocean. There's information in talking with Alan when you communicate that could be an important piece in terms of negotiation. Something when you said, well, this is the same as that, he might go, no, it's not, or he might go, yes, it is. I mean, I'm not, and I don't mean to pick on you because I'm just saying that we all represent things how we represent them, and we understand things. So if I say it's the ocean, he goes, well, no, it's not the ocean. It's the part of the ocean, or a drop from the ocean, or ocean water. I mean, that's all pertinent in order for us to be able to understand each other and get along.
And that's what I love about this show is we definitely come here and we get to speak our mind. We get to see each other. Hi, Debbie. We get to see each other's perspective. And that's the great thing about communication. And Alan probably sees it in every day of his teachings and stuff. And that's what I'm saying. That's what's so great about this and our show. And I
think Alan's actually thinking another Tuesday night shot to hell.
Yeah. And really, you guys need to follow his breakfast or his coffee with Alan in the morning. And I'm starting to share his shows as much as I can because I love seeing his shows.
I'm ready.
This topic did make me think of something, though. When you think of who are you pretending not to be, or the question, who am I, there is one correct literary answer. 24601. That might have went over some people's head. But
look at Scott's face.
You don't know the answer?
No.
24601?
No.
Anybody?
24601.
You're gonna have to put spoiler alerts on the show. We had Ted Lasso being revealed.
Yeah.
I could have worn my shirt 24601. That is Jean Valjean's prisoner number.
All right, yeah.
Spilled bread.
Les Miserables.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
I hate to say I've never seen it.
Oh.
Never seen it. Never read it.
You know what? Oh,
great novel.
Oh,
I mean, I read the unabridged. I've read the abridged. I've seen every movie version.
Every version of it, right?
And I've seen the professional musical 3 times.
It's
amazing.
And
we're going to go to it again in November, my wife and I.
Scott, I wish my school, I wish I would have been part of that production because I've done theater production and I would have loved to been a stage person for that. Would have loved to. Oh, that is amazing. Anyways, but yeah, I didn't remember the number. So
I'm a huge fan. I'm such a fan. We named our daughter Cosette.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Okay.
And the joke about that we joke with my daughter, she's named after a coffee cup. The first time, I mean, I have a couple Les Mis coffee cups that I've bought. And at the time she was born, I had one that was on the shelf from when my wife and I went to the theater production. And we're looking at baby names going. And I looked over at the bookshelf and I saw that cup. And I was like, what about Cosette? And my wife's like, yeah.
I love
Name
it.
solved.
Oh, I love it. I love that. That is so cool. I'm glad you shared that.
That's awesome. Listen, guys, we have about 6 minutes left. It's a good time to do a kind of a go around and, on the topic, off the topic, whatever you guys want to share to start wrapping up the show. Let's start with Alan. Alan.
I'm going to say, Scott, get the book, read the book, and check out several of the movie versions. The Hugh Jackman is a musical movie version, but there are other movies based on the story. Just it's a fantastic story.
Yes,
and
you'll
the
love it.
music is awesome too.
Yes.
So I'm going to end with saying, Scott, you got to check that out. And anybody listening, you ought to check it out. It's a fantastic story, fantastic musical.
I certainly will do that. I mean, I finally found it within myself to watch Sound of Music, and I did, and I made it through that. I'm sure I can make it through this.
Well,
I'll
hang on.
enjoy it, but don't you?
Have you seen Mary Poppins yet?
Yeah, I was forced to watch that when I was a child.
Sugar makes the medicine go down. Medicine go down.
I love you, Rex. I love you so much.
The best song in Mary Poppins, though, is Toppins, the old lady on the steps.
Oh yeah.
So,
Sandy,
Chimmery.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Dick Van
was
Dyke.
Dick Van Dyke.
Oh,
Barry, what do you got to say, brother?
I can't even follow that. I don't know.
Hi, Sandy.
I guess I mean, you know, I didn't exactly spoil Ted Lasso because that's been out. The third season's been out for a long time. But the reminder again that this, I mean, the
but
whole
only
topic.
for the people who haven't seen it.
Yeah, but the things I didn't say how it happens. So you're still going to watch it to kind of say it's
No, you're good. You're safe. You're safe. Sing it, Selby. Sing it, Selby.
So back to the topic, Tyler, for a second, just to bring it back home to this about who you're pretending not to be. And as a question for anybody watching this, is my invitation to you, if you're watching this, is ask yourself, what are you doing that detracts from who you really are? What are you doing to avoid who you really are? Because most of us oftentimes so busy doing stuff, we forget to be somebody. So saying who you pretend not to be, my encouragement is that we all are amazing, magnificent beings, but we get busy with the stuff that gets in the way of that. So take a time every day, every chance you get, just to look in the mirror and go, oh yeah, I see you now. I remember who I am. That's your homework.
I love
like
that,
that.
Barry. Thank you.
I like that. Rex?
Well, along with what do you call it?
And while he's thinking about it, I'm putting Barry's book up there. I got to get Alan's book up here if he comes back up, if he shows up again.
So, thank you for putting my book up. So, along with Les Mis is one of my favorite movies is Papillon, which I would consider almost a parallel story, not necessarily the same, but in many ways.
Just roaches.
But Papillon is beautiful for another reason. Because papillon is the French word for butterfly. So think about that for a second. We have butterfly, and the Spanish have mariposa. And the French have papillon. So I mean, there's different ways of describing the very same thing, right?
Mariposas.
And how you say it may determine what you think about it. So again, mariposa.
Mariposas.
Farfalla is Turkish, if I believe. And papillon is French. And you know what German is? Schmetterling.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Mariposa sounds way better.
Well, or papillon. I mean, in other words, it's describing the very same thing. It's just different words. And so sometimes depending on, and, if somebody said, oh, Schmetterling, you'd go, what the heck is that? Somebody goes, it's this flying little thing that wisps around, that lands on flowers. You go, okay, Schmetterling. Sounds like a tank. Or part of a tank. But it's a description and it's a mindset of the people whose language has helped them think the way they think and do what they do. So we are a product of our own imagination and our own creativity and our own ability to set intentions. And if you don't like something, intend to do something differently and then move to do that and find out what happens. Because otherwise you're just doing the same old thing over and over and over again. And how's that working out for you, as Dr. Phil would say?
I love it.
No, that is not appropriate.
Well, I want to say two things. One is, again, please read my blog tomorrow. It's an important one on hardship. But also, I'm keynoting this Healthopedia summit tomorrow. It's at noon Eastern time, so that's 11 Central and 10 Pacific or whatever. So I don't know. It's free. It's on YouTube and some other TV thing or whatever. But it's a Healthopedia. Les Brown did today. I do tomorrow. And Manny Lopez, the athlete, does Friday.
Awesome.
So
wow.
Awesome.
Come join us. That's my shameless plug.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Well, this has been a great show. I appreciate you guys being here. And of course, everybody out there watching and listening, please share this with your friends. And I look forward to this every week. The only thing I can wrap this up with is, if you're waking up and you're not looking forward to your day, and you're just if you're constantly waiting for this day to be over and just to get over, maybe you're not living your best life. Maybe you need to start thinking about doing things differently. It's within your control. Don't ever believe it's not. It's always within your control. We give up control constantly in our lives, doing this, doing that. Stop doing it with your happiness. Take control. Do what you got to do. And hey, embrace life. Embrace the good and bad, and embrace the ugly. Because what was ugly yesterday is going to be the beauty tomorrow. That's how we got the minivan. So.
Oh my gosh.
And fashion
love to all of you. Love you guys. And again, Barry, Rex, Alan, and of course the lovely Lynn Serrano. You're the best, babe.
So I have one more thing to say. Because I know the hosts won't do it. If you like the show and you didn't comment, you can always comment in the replay and go ahead and share the show out. But watch it, comment, share it, and help other people discover it, so they too, if you benefited, so can they.
Nice.
Thank you, Rex. Love you guys. Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Keeping me safe and sound.